reality of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
Hey folks, good evening. And welcome to another Phantoms Monster Fortean Report show, where I narrate and discuss some of the cryptid and unexplained sightings and encounters submitted to the Phantoms Monster site and to Phantoms Monster Fortean Research. So thanks for joining me. And the Phantoms Monsters radio channel is made possible by you clicking the subscribe button and by you sharing our programming. Super chat and super thanks. Our donations are definitely appreciated, and buy me a coffee link is available as well. So thanks for your consideration. Now, if you're in the chat and you have a question, please use caps. And if you can save the posting the question until the very end when I do my, when I tell you I've done my last reading. Then I won't miss anything because it's going to be, I'm kind of solo at night, and it's kind of hard for me to keep an eye on everything. So if you can do that for me, I'll try to get to it as soon as I can. So again, thanks for joining me this evening. I hope I'm sounding okay to everybody, and we'll go from here. So the first account was a young woman who was actually out in the evening selling cable and Wi-Fi services to customers in their homes at Cape May, New Jersey. She then unexpectedly encountered a huge canine-like cryptid. So this is what was forwarded to me. So to begin, this story happens in 2018. I arrived in this small rural town near Cape May, New Jersey. The company I was working for at the time was sending me out to go door to door advertising cable and Wi-Fi that they wanted me to sell. I was getting weird vibes all throughout the day, as the town itself is very small and a bit creepy, with people staring at me or giving me a cold shoulder for the entire day. It seemed like a lot of townsfolk that I encountered that day were on edge, and it was a weird, tense atmosphere that I shrugged off, as people are weird all the time. So I continued doing my job, chugging a Red Bull to keep me going, which didn't affect me at all, surprisingly. Besides the weird atmosphere, the scenery was actually quite pretty once you got off the main road. I had to stop at several streets, and some were in the woods some were in the woods on long, seemingly beautiful, endless road, but quite scenic. So just before sunset, I was scheduled to visit a few houses on a small peninsula. To get to the peninsula, I actually know where that's at too. You had to go down a very long road, past the summer camp area, past the trailer park, past the woods, and then you finally find yourself in a small open area with a bay marsh and a couple small expensive houses and shore access. Now the houses were so close to the water it seemed to be a code violation, but I'm sure they were built to withstand storms since they look very expensive. Now every house had its own theme, and the area was mostly deserted. Only one house had someone inside whom I had talked to after knocking on his door. I was also distracted looking at the houses and scenery that I didn't notice how fast sunset was approaching. I came to the realization that I should start heading back to avoid being alone on that long deserted pathway in the woods. Now, as a smaller female, I've never I'm never comfortable after dark in isolated places, especially without cell service. I was making my way down the path, so far so good, as it wasn't completely dark yet. Now, as I approached the wooded area of the road, I was walking a bit faster since there were no street lights and the sunset was rapidly disappearing. Now, as I walked at a decently fast pace, I noticed something. Now, the woods were eerily quiet. All the life that I was hearing before was gone. No crickets, birds, pure silence. I stopped in my tracks and got the chills down my spine as I felt the feeling that I was being watched. I looked around the dark woods for any sudden movements, and then, like clockwork, something up ahead made its way out of the tree line. It looked to be some type of large animal. My brain went into overdrive, analyzing whatever this animal was. Was it a bear, a dog? No, it looked like a large dog, but dogs don't get this big. Though I was intimidated by its large size, whatever it was hadn't noticed me. Even though I was scared, I also didn't want to walk back and go into a one man's house. As a woman, I would rather take my chances with the wild animal than be alone with a man I don't deserve it, don't know in a deserted holiday neighborhood. Suddenly I was thinking this: the large animal in the distance finally noticed my presence. It was observing me, not entirely sure of what to do with me. There wasn't enough light anymore for me to see the animal's face, but I felt unusually frightened. Now, whatever I was looking at was definitely too big to be a black bear, with a shoulder height of at least 5 feet on all fours, which is comparable to the size to a brown bear. Now, the mass of this creature was extensive, as its outline of what I could see looked like that of a wolf on steroids. It was very muscular. I also noticed that the outline of its face was very similar to that of a German shepherd or a wolf, as it had perked ears and a long snout. Now, in the heat of the moment, I could only hear the sound of my heart palpitating as fear and adrenaline started to crawl their way into my bloodstream. Now, it felt as if time stood still, and then it dawned on me. What I was looking at wasn't a normal animal. It was simply too big to be any animal that I would recognize from New Jersey's catalog of fauna. And if it wanted to attack me, I would be powerless against it. It was simply too big. Though, to calm myself down, I threw the idea that this creature was out of the ordinary out because I felt like this could be rationalized somehow. So I made my brain go back to the idea of this being maybe a large dog or coyote. I also didn't believe in cryptids and was completely unaware of what size coyotes were supposed to be. So I made a quick decision. Realizing this could very well be a life or death situation, I came to the conclusion that this was just a very large dog creature and probably a skittish coyote that I would scare off, at least temporarily, to calm down my nerves. What other choice did I have? The longer I kept standing there, the more aggressive I might come across to this animal, and I didn't want to get territorial or get the idea I was going to be easy prey. So I decided I would make the most hideous, loud, confusing, and startling scream howl I could muster and just sprint the rest of the way. After I screeched this hideous sound out of my body as hard as I could, the animal quickly changed its body language to defensive. But then it quickly changed its mind to deciding I wasn't worth a fight, as it ran a decent distance into the woods not too far away. I decided to sprint as fast as I could pass that area and beyond. I sprinted until I reached the end of the road and noticed that there was a summer camp area with streetlights near me. I rested on top of a table there, out of breath and feeling my heart pound out of my chest. However, I was still very shaken up and still felt like I was being watched. I kept my eyes on the tree line. My eyes were darting around looking for any sign of this animal that was still there. Once I felt like the coast was clear, I located the next house I was scheduled to visit and quickly made my way over there. I met a nice family who ended up buying cable for me, and I told them what had happened to me that night and how I was treated and how I had been treated by the locals. The lady of the family, who I presumed to be a mother, said, "I don't know why they sent you out here alone. These woods are dangerous after dark, and there are creepy people who live around here." The impression she was giving me was that there were animal encounters she couldn't explain, and there were lots of ex-cons in the area, and people who should have been arrested but haven't been. She was equally concerned about the people as she was about the animals around the place. This gave me goosebumps. How many times today could my life have been taken? They were extremely concerning. They were extremely concerned for my safety and told me to contact my team leader so I could get picked up. They said they didn't want me to go outside again, and I should call it quits for the night and not to make any other house calls. To this day, I still had no idea what creature I had encountered. There are strange things in the woods, things people don't speak about or cover up. I felt like the townsfolk of that town knew something about what I encountered, so weird creature I encountered in those woods, let's just never meet again. That's kind of unusual. I mean, I don't normally get anything like that, where the witnesses actually state that they think that something is actually going on there. Now, quite frankly, I went back and looked, and I haven't seen anything as far as cryptid canines in that area, Cape May or anywhere else otherwise. But who knows? I don't know what that was all about. So this next incident, a bizarre encounter with a smiling man during a scary airliner flight from New Orleans to New York City, prompted the witness to research a deadly air crash that occurred in New York City on the day of his birth. Now, the witness writes, "I was born on the evening of June 24th, 1975, in New York City 1 month prematurely while my parents were there visiting my mother's family in various East Coast locations from our home in St. Louis, Missouri. Now, in 2015, a friend of mine took me to New Orleans for a few days prior to my birthday as a gift. We had a great time and had tickets to fly home in the early afternoon on my birthday. Now, the flight out of Louis Armstrong Airport was uneventful except for two things. The first was an older guy sitting beside us who kept looking our way. He had what I can only describe as a gentle smile on his face. I didn't feel creeped out so much, but I was just weird to have him spend so much time looking our way in silence. The next thing was when we started to descend for landing, the plane started to shake and jolt terribly. Now, my buddy and I looked at each other with the "what the F" expression. I glanced past my friend and caught the eye of the man sitting across the aisle. He was looking straight at me, with that grin still on his face. He leaned out from his seat towards ours and said very calmly and in a firm tone, "This one will land just fine." Then turned his head and looked forward. That gentle smile never left his face. Now, from there, the ride got really rough, but the plane landed just fine. Now, the pilot came on the intercom and quickly explained that they had some type of bad wind shear, gave us a weather update, and thanked us for flying. Everyone on the plane was so stressed, I swear I could smell the fear. Now, as we got our carry-ons out of the overhead, I made the point to not even glance at that dude, but I could feel him looking at me. We got off and hustled our butts out of there. Nobody was saying a word. We were just all still a bit freaked out. But here's where it gets creepy. Last year, I was reading about air disasters. That experience stuck with me, and I developed a bit of an obsession. So one day came across a story of Eastern Airline Flight 66. The flight left New Orleans in the early afternoon on June 24th, 1975, en route to JFK in New York City. The plane crashed on the descent due to severe wind shear, killing 113 people. just hours before I was born. 40 years to the day from my flight with the man and his gentle grin. So that was quite an unusual account. But every once in a while we get something weird like that. You had to excuse me, folks. My allergies have been acting up. So the next account, now a report from Newfork referenced an encounter with a dark humanoid with an orange glow, and after a visit from two men in black, the woman immediately files an addendum to the Newfork report. Now, back in 2015, I received a telephone call from a man in Texas who wished to remain anonymous, though I have his personal information. He states that he was a relative of the woman who submitted the following report to Newfork in 2009, which I searched for on the site. Now, this occurred on December 5th, 2009. It's 1600 hours, and it was reported the next day to Newfork. Now, location was in Hugo, Oklahoma, and the report states dark human-like figure that was glowing orange around it and floating. I was sitting on the living room couch talking with my husband, and my 8-year-old son was in the front yard. I saw flickers of an orange glow reflecting off a box on the porch through the living room window. I opened the door to see what it was when I saw my son standing past the end of the east end of the house, staring at the porch. I asked him what he was doing and what was going on. He walked quickly over to me and proceeded to tell me what he saw. He was crying and shaking and very scared. He said he saw a dark figure with really big dark eyes with an orange glow all around it. He said it looked like it was floating just a little off the ground. It came from behind my car and went next to the house and turned and looked at him. He said it then floated higher and was about the height of Christmas lights hanging on the porch. He said it looked at him. He slightly turned his head and closed his eyes briefly because he was scared. And when he looked back, it was gone. Now, he said whatever he saw was about as tall as him, about 4 foot. He said he could see his legs and its arms appear to be straight down beside its body. He said its face was very dark and its eyes were really big and slightly different color than the face. He said it glowed all around it. I estimated it was 40 to 50 feet from the entity, given where he was and where he said he saw it. It was during daylight, approximately 4 p.m. I saw the flickering orange glow for about 3 seconds, and my son saw it for about 10 seconds. We live in a wooded area, have dogs in the back, and they did not bark at all. However, when I called my husband out to tell him what happened and to look for it, my small house dog came out and immediately started smelling the ground where my son said the entity had been floating. I am sound mind. I've never seen or heard anything like this. I'm very curious as to what, somewhat confused as to what happened. Well, anyway, later on, she wrote an addendum to Peter Davenport at Newfork, and she stated in the addendum, I am requesting my submission on 12/6/09 regarding my son's observation of an orange and glowing dark figure on 12/5/09 be removed or not be posted. I have reason to believe that his apparent experience may not be accurate. Again, please do not post the report that was made regarding his experience. After questioning him further, I may have simply been the sun shining in his eyes or something else. Thank you. Well, the relative of the woman who had filed the report, who I believe was her brother, told me that a few days after the report was filed, 2 men dressed in black suits arrived at the woman's residence driving a black full-size car. He believes it's a 2004 Ford Crown Victoria. This relative happened to be at the woman's residence when the men arrived. It was approximately 2:00 p.m. local time, and they knocked on the front door. The woman answered the door, and they introduced themselves as investigators for the state of Oklahoma. They quickly flashed identification and asked to speak with the woman who made the report. The relative was sitting at the kitchen table and heard the conversation. The two men refused to come inside and wanted the woman to come out onto the porch. The relative looked out the side window and noticed the vehicle. After 5 minutes or so, the woman came back into the house and was visibly upset. Without saying a word, she immediately went online with the family computer. The relative asked her several times what had occurred, but she refused to talk by simply saying wait. The relative sat in the living room watching the woman on the computer. Now, a while later, she shut down the computer and sat next to the relative. She explained that the two men asked her what her son had seen. After telling them about the encounter, they requested that she withdraw the report as soon as possible and to forget the incident. She was still very shaken and explained that the men just acted weird. The man who talked sounded like he was reading from a script. She asked the relative to go to her son's school and pick him up instead of letting him come home on the bus. When the relative and her son got home, the woman was sitting at the kitchen table reading the Bible. She told the son not to ever talk about what had happened. Now, as far as the relative knows, there was no further contact by anybody else. Several strange incidents occurred at the residence over the years, including a UFO that hovered over the house and was witnessed by the entire household. It was never reported. The family moved to another state in 2014. Now, there was one more aspect to this account that was interesting, but I'm not sure if it applies. The boy who witnessed the entity has had severe mental issues since the encounter, but the relative refused to go into detail. He only mentioned it because the boy's mother believes that the incident was to blame for the boy's problem. Now, honestly, I'm not sure what to think about this information. The relative sounded pretty sincere, but it didn't sit right with me for some unknown reason. Now, after these many years, I still haven't not come to the complete answer to this incident. And I have tried to contact them again. I did get a hold of Newfork a couple years ago to see if they had heard anything, and they hadn't. I actually talked to Peter Davenport, and he never took I don't think he ever took the report down. But I mean, this is what they're saying that happened, so I'm just going by what the witness stated. So another incident: a family was in their boat fishing along the Potomac River in Washington County, Maryland. The witness's grandfather observed a large, smooth-skinned aquatic creature rolling in the water. So the witness writes, this incident took place in 1993. I was in a fishing boat with my father and my grandfather in Potomac River in Sidling Hill Wildlife Management Area, which is Washington County, Maryland. We had been on my father's boat fishing for a few hours already. My father's girlfriend was also in the boat, which wasn't all that large, maybe the size of a regular sedan vehicle. Anyway, my father and his girlfriend were looking out towards the front of the boat, and I and my granddad were fishing off the back side of the boat. I and my grandfather were simply talking about whatever, and fishing went all of a sudden. We looked maybe 20 yards away from where we were, and we saw it. I'm not sure what it was, but I'll try to describe what I saw. I saw a creature about the size of a large alligator, maybe 6 to 7 foot in length, but the creature was definitely not an alligator. It had grayish-brown color and smooth skin like that of a dolphin. I remember seeing flippers on it, but I don't remember how many, although I do know it was more than 2. Now, I never actually saw its head or tail, just its midsection. I did know what it was doing, but I remember seeing the creature kind of roll around as an alligator or crocodile would do when they're trying to take a chunk of flesh off an animal. I remember comparing what I saw to a log rolling in the water. Now, this animal rolled for a few seconds and disappeared before either one of us could call my dad to check it out. I remember after seeing it, both me and my grandfather looked at each other in disbelief. Now, my father always did think we were just playing. I know what I saw, and it freaked me out. More so because I had been swimming in the same area a few days before the incident. To this day, I still don't know what it was, and I had no idea what they saw. Now, this was, I don't know what year, this 1993. That was before the whole snakehead thing, the invasive species had gotten into Potomac, and in more recent years, there have been some pretty large snakeheads caught. But back then, I'm sure they weren't in there, so I don't know what they encountered. So, this last incident, and I'll take questions after this, so you can go ahead and start posting now if you want. A Sussex County, New Jersey mother encountered a clicking glimmer man while in the woods near her home. She is fearful that the humanoid is stalking her since she still hears the clicking sounds. Now, I recently received this account, and from all indications, it's still going on. I live in a very rural part of northern New Jersey in Sussex County. Behind my property and to the left of my house is all forest. There are a few trails. Next door to me is a protected wild wilderness area where you can't build on. And every once in a while, I would take my son in his little wagon and would set up on the clearing and have a nice little picnic. We are playing a few feet up before you go into the woods, so we're playing in the little clearing, and he starts to mimic the sounds that he hears, for instance, the neighbor's dog, birds, etc. He mimicked the sounds around us, like the squirrels running by and the chipmunks. Now, all of a sudden, I turned around to see him, turn around to get him some fruit salad or whatever that we were eating that day, and out of the corner of my eye, I see him just stop. He's saying, "Mom, Mom," but he's staring away, not looking at me. He's looking into the tree and he's pointing, but he's not blinking. I turned around, I asked, "What do you see? Do you see a birdie?" Then it hit me. There were no sounds. He starts walking into the woods, but the whole time he's looking up. He's still not looking where he's going and pointing up into the tree. The only movement I see besides my son are leaves rustling in the trees. But then I see it, and it's like heat rising off the concrete on a sunny day. But it's in the tree, and it's like crouched down. One arm is out to the side, and its knees are bent. Immediately, I feel this thing's glare burning into me. Then I hear the clicking sounds. As soon as his eyes snapped to me, my son looked at me. As soon as his eyes snapped to me, my son looked at me and freaking panicked. It literally had the shape of a humanoid. It's so hard to explain because it was human-like, but the way it was crouched reminded me of a praying mantis. Now, my son is then mimicking a clicking sound that this thing was making. I grab my son and we run back to the house. All the food and everything is left in the woods. Now, I told my friend about what we experienced that evening. He went back into the woods and gathered my belongings. He stayed in the woods for about an hour, telling me later that he didn't see or hear anything unusual. Now, that was 6 months ago. It is now February 2023. I have read a few Glimmer Man reports from others online. When I go outside during the day, I occasionally hear those same clicking sounds coming from the woods. At night, while in bed, I hear the faint clicking sounds emanating from the deep woods. I believe that this Glimmer Man is stalking us. I asked my neighbors if they heard the strange clicking sounds. They haven't. Maybe I'm only allowed to hear them myself. I'll keep you updated. So I'm hoping I do get an update. You know, I talked to the witness the day I got the report, and I find the clicking sounds interesting. Since I really don't remember any previous reports of these Glimmer Men being associated with clicking sound, but it's reminiscent of the sound made by the cloaked predator from, you know, the alien from the films. It did make the clicking sound. So The witness stated that she had not seen any of the Predator films until recently after her encounter. So I don't know what she ran into, but it's quite interesting. So let's see what kind of questions you got here. Okay, Sue G. Lon, do you know of any dogman encounters in or around Erie? You know, again, you have to excuse me. I have sinus issues. The closest I know of any cryptid canine reports near Erie are in Allegheny State Forest. Offhand, I can't think of any in Erie or the area around Erie. There have been plenty of Bigfoot reports, plenty of UFO reports, plenty of alien reports, but as far as upright canines or cryptid canines, I really don't. I'll look into it, but offhand I can't think of any. Bernadette asked, could it be stalking the child and not her? You're talking about the Glimmer man. Sure. I mean, it could be stalking anybody or anything. We just don't know much about these things. We're getting more and more reports. I keep thinking about the person who wrote the Predator movies, that they had not had an encounter like that, to where they put it into the book, their film, the screenplay or whatever. But it's interesting. I just don't know what it was. But I hope she does get back to me. I really do. Marla Snyder. Do you think the clicking sounds are a threat or intimidation or tactic? They could be. They could be some type of warning. Could it be like a sonar type of thing where they're kind of bouncing sounds off? I don't know. I don't know what it was. But it's interesting. That's the first one I remember of any of the Glimmer Man reports that I can remember of any clicking sounds or any sounds whatsoever. So it's interesting. Now, Thomas Carroll asks, has there been any increase in activity with all the work they have been doing in Gettysburg? Yeah, there has been. I have been talking to people at Gettysburg. I did mention not long ago where there have been in the area around Little Round Top, and Thomas and Bernadette were with me when we were up there about a year back in November of 2001. So you know the area. So that whole area, they've got the whole area ripped up. I mean, they're changing everything up there. And they're putting paths and moving things around, make it easier access, clean things up, try to take any hazards away. But people who have been working up there, and I was at one of the stores in Gettysburg where they sell artifacts and such, and I did run into one of the guys who worked up there. And he was telling me that they're running into all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, large stones being rolled down the hill, things being missing, tools going missing, people seeing things out of the corner of their eye, hearing strange things. Sometimes when they come in there in the early morning, things are moved around. So yeah, there has been activity. Hopefully I can get some more information from some other folks who've been up there. What I will do is, when I do have access to some of the rangers, some of the people who work up there for the battlefield, and do some of the tours and stuff, I'll see what they have to say about it. But yeah, there definitely has been activity. Tony BX. Hey Lon, do you have any reports of Dogman or Bigfoot seen together? No, they seem to stay apart. I don't have any of them being together. We have had incidents where they have been known to be in the same area, but they do they do distance themselves apart from each other. West of me is Micho State Forest, which is only, what, about 25 miles from me. And we've got both DOGMAN and Bigfoot up there. And it's well known for Bigfoot activity, and there's been upright canine activity up there as well. But as far as activity, you know, together, or people seen them together, no, that just has not happened. Okay. Any other questions before I roll out of here? As you can probably tell, my voice is getting a little weak, but hanging in there. Okay. Burning Down wants to know, what about your recent not deer story? Okay, which one was that? I can't think of offhand. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I had to look up here. I tell you, one thing that I do know, ever since the surgeries and everything, I'm kind of forgetful about a lot of different things, so. Yeah, I don't know which one it is. I'm sorry. The one where it was running into a tree and talking to the witness. Oh, that. Yeah, that was kind of weird. You know, I don't know what to think about that. That was the U.S. Marine corporal who had that encounter at Quantico Base, if I remember correctly. Let me pull it up. Yeah, the guy used a pseudonym and everything. It was that was an account that was sent to me by one of my researchers that he had found on a TV show. I don't know what they ran into, but I have heard from one other person who was stationed at Quantico at the Marine base that it does have a reputation for a lot of weird things that go on up there. So I don't know. I don't know what that thing was. I wish I did have a chance to talk to the guy. Maybe I can get in contact with him somehow. Though I don't have his name. He used an anonymous name. And the TV show, I'm quite sure, isn't going to give out any information. So, Crowley asked, Lon, hunting here in southwest Pennsylvania, I feel like something has been around. Well, that may very well be. Southwest Pennsylvania is very active. A lot of stuff going on out there. Greene County and Washington County are very active. Bigfoot and upright canine activity. I had a real weird story out of there years ago. I might pull it up. The guy called it a dark walker. I don't know if it was a Bigfoot or what it was, but I'll pull that up and talk about it on one of the upcoming shows. Jose Sanchez, any news on the night walkers of California? Haven't heard anything in a while. Nope, I haven't either. Haven't heard much of anything. You know, we get all these pale humanoid reports, and sometimes you hear something about it, and you know, you may think, well, maybe it has something to do with those night walkers or whatever the Fresno night crawlers or whatever you want to call those. I don't know, but no, I haven't heard anything recently. Okay, folks. Well, thanks again, and thanks for your questions. Now, if you have an unexplained encounter sighting, feel free to contact me through the Phantoms Monster blog site. And thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. I really appreciate the folks in the chat room. Please like, subscribe, and share. Now, if you have a sighting encounter report you'd like to be considered for the personal report show, or even post on Phantoms of Monsters, feel free to email me at Lon Strickler at phantomsofmonsters.com. I will say I'm getting better. I'm feeling better, getting a little stronger. My voice is getting better. My breath is getting better. Not as much pain. So hopefully we can continue this at a steady pace. I'm probably going to continue doing the personal report shows for the most part until I decide when I do any type of roundtables or any guest appearances. But in the meantime, I've got all this stuff in my archive, and I get a lot of stuff every day, so I'm going to continue doing that. And as long as people enjoy it, I'm going to keep on doing it. So until we meet again, stay healthy, have a safe, enjoyable week. Good night.